Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sleep and sleep cycles, and this is going to be part of a multi-video series on improving your sleep, part of our mental health series actually, and it'll be in that playlist if you're a subscriber to the channel. This is probably going to take a couple videos to talk about everything that we need to talk about, but let's go ahead and get started. Stay with me now. All right, thank you for staying with me. So, in my primary job is working as a mental health therapist. I've been working in the field for 20 years in variety of settings, government practice, private practice, for-profit, non-for-profit. I've been licensed in 3 different states. I do clinical supervision for people who are new to the field or trying to obtain licensure. I do consultations. I do public speaking. One of the first things that I always talk about and assess with my patients is what's their sleep cycle like. And the reason for that is when we sleep, there is very important things that happen that affect our mood and our mental health. Okay, so when we sleep, it's probably helpful to use some metaphors here and think of your brain as a computer. And we get all these things going on up there, and periodically the computer has to shut down to function correctly, right? Periodically you have to restart. Periodically you might even have to run a defrag. Well, when we're sleeping and we're dreaming, part of what's going on is our brain is defragging all of the stuff that is going on our conscious level and the things that kind of run underneath the surface at the subconscious level. It tries to make sense of them, tries to sort it all out and put them in a healthy place so that you can function the next day. Part of what happens during a sleep cycle is our bodies also release certain hormones that are very much involved with regulation of mood. For example, in men at about 5:30, it's not really 5:30, it's like an hour before sunrise. It's hardwired into us for about an hour before sunrise. We get a massive dose of testosterone. Well, testosterone has a lot of beneficial things for men and women. Women get some testosterone too. But one of the things that it does do is it actually helps affect mood. Too much or too little can be a problem. But if you're not sleeping during that time, like 1 hour before sunrise, or we'll call it 5:30 in the morning for most people, then you're probably not getting that released to the fullest benefit that it could. So it's like taking half of a multivitamin. We in the field see many people who work third shift with mood disorders. It's absolutely tied into that. Okay, so this is so important. This is why I assess this, and one of the first things that I typically will want to work on with my patients is let's figure out what's going on with your sleep cycle and let's get your sleep cycle on track. Now, if you work third shift, we're going to have to make some adaptations to this because maybe you have to. We certainly need people to work third shift for EMTs. Hospitals, police, firefighters, even security is needed. But maybe you don't. Maybe there's some people out there that are watching this video that are working third shift, and maybe you really don't. You've liked working third shift, and you haven't realized the toll that it's taken on your mental, on your brain, and on your thoughts and on your mood. And if you don't have to work one of those shifts because of an essential, medical personnel or something like that, I want you to at least think about that maybe it's going to make sense for you to ask, if you've been in that company for a while, to ask, if an opening comes up on the first shift, can I move over to the first shift? It certainly would be a whole lot easier on your body. Now, I know there's people out there who are going to say, well, I'm a night owl. Yeah, that is true. I'm talking about the averages. I'm talking about the normies, right? There are people out there who have a circadian rhythm that's a little bit different. And there are people who are more going to probably be hardwired to be awake at nighttime. Hey, that's fantastic. We need you to work EMT. We need you to work in the hospitals. I need you to be a police officer, or whatever you're doing. I'm just kind of throwing that stuff out there. So that kind of stuff is really, some of the stuff we'll talk about will be helpful for you, and some of it's probably not going to apply because your body's just wired a little bit different, but I'll still try to be as helpful as I can with this. And I certainly have patients that I work with that are in that boat too. So I mentioned circadian rhythms a minute ago. What's a circadian rhythm? Well, your body has this natural ebb and flow of what is hardwired for your energy fluctuations for the day. When you get hungry, when you have to use the bathroom, when you feel the most mentally alert, when your sex drive's the highest, and all kinds of other things are regulated with that. And sleep for most people, for the average person, is really hardwired to be from sunset to sunrise. Now, obviously, with the invention of electricity, we have changed the game, right? So most people are not going to bed at sunset. We've evolved a little bit to adapt to this. We probably don't need 12 hours of sleep, right? Most people, but the average that we in the medical fields will usually talk about is we'd like you to get 8. If you can get 6, that's pretty good. In mental health, I will tell you that if you can get 4 hours of good sleep, you will mitigate a lot of the problems, right? We're going to talk about that in just a second, but I wanted you to know what a circadian rhythm is, and that for most people, the natural sleep cycle would have been from maybe like an hour after sunset to right around sunrise, or an hour before sunrise. And we've changed that. We've changed that with electricity and with our habits. So that's the first part, I guess. Let's talk about that. So problem number one is, if your circadian rhythms have gotten off, how do we get this back on track, right? Well, number one, you probably have gotten into some habits where maybe you're napping during the day because you didn't sleep good for the last 3 nights. You're not going to like the next thing I'm about to tell you. You've got to cut out the naps and reset. Just like we reset a computer, we restart it, and that makes a big difference. We've got to cut out the naps and go back to the natural circadian rhythm. Not sunset, but 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 for most people at the latest. If you're following a normal schedule, like you work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever, that's what most people should be on, getting up at somewhere between 5:30 and 6:30. So if you've been not sleeping good for a few days, it's gonna be pretty miserable. But what you got to do to get this back on track is you've got to skip a nap and then maybe you go to bed a little bit earlier. Maybe you go to bed at 8. Force yourself to stay awake. I would even say, if you have to, have a little bit of caffeine, unless your doctor's told you that you can't have caffeine. Let's talk about caffeine next. That's the next piece of this. So cut out your naps, right? Later on, after you've had a full week of good sleep, right, that you're sleeping at least 6 hours, and sometimes 8 hours, maybe sometimes a little bit less, and it's a restful sleep. You wake up, you're feeling a little bit better, your mind feels clear, your body doesn't feel tired. You can start implementing a little afternoon nap, but here's the key, and most people in the medical field are going to agree with me here: try not to do more than 30 minutes. Because what happens is, when you look at a sleep cycle, the first 30 minutes are just kind of drifting down, getting more and more relaxed, brain's relaxing, body's relaxing. That's fine. Once you hit about that 20-minute mark or the 30-minute mark, your body starts to go into the first stage of sleep. And when your body goes into the first stage of sleep and you don't get a full 2 hours, you're going to probably wake up feeling groggy and tired and cranky, and maybe you've even had that experience where you wake up and you're like, what day is it? What day is it? That's because your whole circadian rhythm has been thrown off. You slept too long. You got to keep those naps to a half hour or less. I'm sorry, you came here to watch this video to fix your sleep. I'm just going to give you the truth, and not all of it's fun. So if you do that 2-hour nap and you get that full sleep cycle, you might not wake up feeling groggy, tired, and confused, But guess what's going to happen? That night, you're probably going to have a hard time falling back asleep. And you started the process all over again. So this is the number one problem that I encounter when people, their circadian rhythms start by getting off because maybe they were thinking too much or worrying too much or anxiety or nightmares or panic or trauma has gotten that off. They've compensated by napping, and their napping is now keeping them out of the normal circadian rhythm. Okay? If you have any questions about that, you know what to do. You comment below. Mr. Sarge will get back to you. All right? Okay, next thing. So let's talk about the caffeine, and this is probably going to be the last piece that we talk about today. And because again, I told you there's a lot to cover when we're working on people's sleep. I can't do this all in one video. We're going to have to break this up into a series. So caffeine. So here's the rule on caffeine. For most people, unless your doctor's told you that you can't have caffeine because of maybe you've got a heart issue or maybe you've got a sensitivity to it, or some people are actually even have like an allergy to it. I knew a guy who would get vertigo with caffeine. If you don't fall in that category, most people it's okay to have a couple 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. Do that in the morning. Okay, so if you're a coffee drinker, if you're a soda drinker, if you're a tea drinker, try to drink it in the morning. And what this next part here is, you're going to have to talk to your doctor specifically. I am not going to give you medical advice here, but I will say if you're drinking caffeine in the afternoon, like how much caffeine you can have. That's what I was referring to there, right? So if you drink 2 cups of coffee, 3 cups of coffee, 4 cups of coffee, please check with your doctor, see what they say about that. But nobody should be drinking caffeine after 2 o'clock, okay? Because again, going back to that first piece there, that circadian rhythms. What you don't realize, you might think, oh, I could drink a cup of coffee and it has no effect on me at all. I hear that all the time. And some people can drink a cup of coffee and go to sleep. Okay. But what you don't realize is that caffeine actually is in your body for, I think it was like 9 hours. You can look that up. When I looked this up a long time ago, it was much longer than you would think. So if you drink a cup of coffee or a soda at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, when it comes to bedtime, it's actually still going through your bloodstream, still stimulating your mind, still stimulating your heart. That is one of the problems that affects people's sleep. And even if you're sitting there and you're watching this video and you say, not me, not me, not me, I'm just going to say, how about this? How about you try it for 30 days and see if your sleep doesn't get better? The caffeine issue, I have a lot of patients who drink a lot of soda, Red Bull, Monster, and I like those products too. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you that, that I've been a perfect angel. I've certainly drank some of that. I've kind of switched back to coffee now, so I've gotten a little bit healthier with it, but I like my caffeine too. And I understand what we can't do though is if you're drinking those all day long, you're just building up this cumulative effect of caffeine just jacking up your heart, jacking up your brain activity. And you may feel like that's not having an effect, but it's so subtle, you don't physically feel it, you don't physically feel jittery, but it is, you're still stimulated. Again, if you don't believe me, try it for 30 days and see how that works for you. So if you've been drinking a ton of caffeine, you probably need to taper down rather than completely stop cold turkey. If you've been drinking a lot of caffeine, you try to stop cold turkey, you're going to go through some pretty nasty withdrawal. You're probably going to get headaches. You're probably going to be miserable, and your family's going to tell you, for crying out loud, drink a Monster Energy drink, right? So do it slow, taper down a little bit at a time. Be mindful of how much you're drinking, and each day drink a little bit less, and that should cut down on your withdrawal. Do that, everybody's different. I could tell you do it for a week, but maybe you need to do it for 10 days. Maybe you need to do that for 30 days before you get it down. The goal is try to get it down so that you're only drinking coffee or whatever you drink, tea, soda, in the morning, and try not to be drinking tons and tons of it. Really, it's just not, it's putting stress on our heart and our brain. And I speak, again, full disclosure, I love caffeine and I drink a lot of coffee. So I'm sharing the information with you. I'm not saying I always am the best at following my own advice. And yes, Sarge gets some insomnia and sleep problems too. We'll probably talk about that in some of these videos. All right, so that's it for today. There's 2 things I want you to work on. If you are watching this video because you've got sleep problems, I want you to work on getting your circadian rhythm back on track, cutting out those 2-hour naps, trying to get to bed at a reasonable time, cutting back on your caffeine, especially after 2 o'clock. And if you do work third shift, maybe if you're not doing something critical like police, EMT, working in a hospital, nursing, nursing home, whatever, just give it some thought. Maybe you don't need to be on third shift. Maybe you could ask your boss, hey, if there's an opening on first shift, can I move over? Okay? I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I don't do that with my patients. I just throw out ideas. I give you little light posts along the path and say, hey, this is an option over here. This has worked for some people. This is an option over here. Have you ever tried this? What do you think would be the most helpful for you? Because ultimately it comes down to you being the expert on you. All right? Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe. Check out my mental health series. We will put an end card up, but you know how YouTube is. Sometimes those end cards are buggy. You may not see it. So maybe I'll throw a little link to it down in the description below. We will see you next time on A Little Bit of Everything with Sarge.